Cuba, it's me, episode 64 of the W.I.L.L.I.W show, which stands for Wrestling is Life. Life is Wrestling. Now, last night, a Canadian wrestler, yes, he represents India, but isn't that what's great about Canada? Is that people from different countries come and claim Canada as their home, and we are so diverse, and we have a lot of different cultures, but Jinder Mahal won the title, and isn't it just great right now how many wrestlers from Canada are represented? I mean, I know Jericho's from Canada, and he's on probably like a rock and roll hiatus or whatnot. But over the years, we had Brett and Owen, and then we had Edge and Christian. Like, we didn't really get too many representatives. So then, now look at it's booming. We got Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn from Quebec. We got Bobby Roode, Eric Young, and Ty Dillinger from Ontario. We got Jinder Mahal and the Singh brothers from British Columbia. But there's a lot of great wrestling in some of those other provinces, and I just feel like, I forgot like Tyson Kidd, of course, and Natalia. I shouldn't have forgot them. But there's so many great wrestlers. When is the next wrestler from Newfoundland going to get signed? Or what about Alberta and Manitoba? There's some great wrestlers out there. And Alberta, is there really a lot of indie wrestling going on in Alberta? Maybe there is, I just don't hear about it. But what about Quebec? There's some more great talents out there in Quebec that we should be getting signed. But not only that, we should start like some kind of, I said this before actually on one episode, we need how they did WWE UK, we need WWE Canada, because there's so many different styles and characters and stuff out here that we could totally pull it off and be so unique and different. We have big guys, we have small guys, we have high flyers, we have a whole bunch of different countries represented just within Canada, and so much talent. Like, I'm just mostly familiar with Ontario, and it's bursting with talent. I know a bit about BC, and all the shows are taking off. Like, back in the day, BC, they didn't only had a couple federations, and they weren't necessarily always drawing big houses. Same with Ontario. When I first moved here, there was only like 6 or 7 promotions, and some of them were struggling. Now, it seems like they're all doing really well for themselves, and I couldn't be more proud to be a Cuban living in Canada my whole life pretty much. And Canada wrestling is really exploding, and I'm just so happy for Jinder. But this is also why I want to tell people, don't ever give up, because you might just end up being at the right place at the right time. Like, I know WWE is expanding to India. They just signed like a huge deal for TV, and I know back in the day Great Khali was from there, but he was more of an attraction. I don't know if he would be considered a great wrestler. I don't even know. Did he win the title or not? I'm not sure. But just nowadays, where the way the social media is, and a lot of people like love to represent their cultures and whatnot. So Jinder Mahal was in 3-man band, which most of you know, and he was just basically relegated to that character, being in 3-man band. Not really, they never really got like a huge push or got the machine behind him. And then he was released, and then he went back and started doing indie shows. But did he give up? No, he worked even harder than he ever had before. So when the brand split happened, they needed more bodies, so they bring back a couple of those kind of guys like him and Kurt Hawkins, and they were gonna bring back Shelton Benjamin. So then he got signed just to have like an extra guy there, someone to have some matches against. Well, then he started looking really, really good, and I commented that on Raw, like when he fought Finn Balor. I'm like, whoa, this guy, he looks phenomenal right now. And then he had that thing with him and Rusev, or I guess that was before. So him and Rusev were a tag team, and they actually looked really good together. And I'm like, he's gonna take off. And everyone's like, oh, they fast-tracked his push. Fast-tracked his push. They didn't give it enough time. He's been around WWE for so long. How much longer do you want them to wait? And really, Orton is champ anyway? Like, do you really want them to have a feud for 4 pay-per-views? Just give him the belt, and that's what they did. They made the right call. So if you ever feel down, imagine you went to a tryout for WWE and you didn't get signed. Well, you are on their radar. They notice these things. Like, people forget. Like, and Drew Galloway got brought back in, the other 3-man band. And then look at Heath Slater's push. So don't give up. just keep trying. They have eyes and ears everywhere. So if you are doing good for yourself, keeping your nose clean, and not bashing the company too much, like like Ryback and those kind of guys, they would probably bring him back. But when you bash a company so much, then they don't necessarily want to bring you back. But so Jinder Mahal, they signed this huge India deal. He's in the right place at the right time, and it's such a perfect gimmick because he's such a big guy, and the Singh brothers look small compared to him. And like they're a tag team, and they remind me like of the Stooges or J&J Security. It's such a perfect thing. They look so good when they're all dressed up, and he cuts these promos, and it's so perfect now because it's so hard to have a heel in wrestling nowadays. Because what I was saying on one show that I did is, if you're a heel, then either you do a good job of being a heel and they start respecting you and cheering for you because they're so smart, they know that you're doing a good job of it, or if they just don't like you, they'll just change the channel. But I find it's kind of hard too with doing a country thing, because like whenever you do that kind of stuff, like I know Kevin Owens is doing the face of America, but I'm a Canadian thing. It's really hard, like, because when you're in the States, yes, you could be a heel and they'll chant USA, USA. But look at Rusev. He was starting to get over. People were starting to cheer for him. And Jinder Mahal, the same thing is going to happen. Like, I know if they go out to do India, he'll be such a popular, like, the good guy and whatnot. But that's kind of the way it is now. WWE just wants to have all the countries represented. And I kind of am not happy that they're doing the gimmick, like, I look different than you and I speak different than you, so that's why you boo me. Because there is a lot of Indian people in Canada and the States, so there's a lot of people that do speak that way. So I don't know if they should have done it that way, but I'm glad they did it anyway, because it's really hard to do anything touchy where anything sensitive, or everyone's so sensitive now. So when you do something where you're talking about people's differences and diversity and stuff like that, they're going to get a little criticism. But the thing about it also is WWE receives so much flack anytime they do a storyline, but like a soap opera or any of the other primetime shows, they can do, like, look at Walking Dead and those kind of shows, they can do anything and it's okay because they're actors. But WWE does it and it's not okay for some reason. Like, I don't get it. They receive more criticism than anybody, and it's not really fair because, like, yeah, they have violence, but like in these other shows, like look at the crime shows. People are getting shot and killed, and like it's over drugs and stuff like that, and they're not even doing any of that stuff. They're just settling it out in the ring with a fight, and they're not killing each other. They're not saying swear words. There's barely any blood. Like, why are people so hard on the WWE? It's like, oh well, it's not the Attitude Era. They're not doing the kiss my ass segment or having girls walking around pulling their bras off and having mud matches. It's so much better now. They're getting so many great sponsors now because people are realizing that, you notice how every time there's a pay-per-view, the number one trending thing is WWE. It's like the most talked about. I know specifically for me, when I go on social media, that's all I hear about is wrestling, but that's because most of the people I follow are involved with wrestling. But it's just so great. I'm so proud to be a Cuba living in Canada, but I am Canadian. I've grown up my whole life here, and it's just a wonderful time. And Jinder Mahal is just the greatest example of never giving up. But look, if you really deserve it, you will get it. Sometimes the path takes longer than others, but don't give up. You might have something. They just don't see it yet, or they don't need that yet, but they might. They might down the road. Like, there's going to be some other kind of, they'll probably do like another cruiserweight tournament. I think a women's tournament is next. But maybe they'll do like a Canada thing. Or, you know what I'm thinking is they're going to do some kind of like country thing. It'll be like unsigned indie talents, like the World Cup, like of soccer. And they'll pick like one from each country. Wouldn't that be great? That's something that they should do. And I'm just really happy for Jinder Mahal. I felt they gave it to him at the right time. He's really, and I like how the SmackDown, it's like different. Like, you can be not doing so good on Raw and lose 10 matches, but then you go to SmackDown, and that's so true. People are like, oh, well, he was losing all these matches and then he won one. Well, look at any other sports. Like in hockey, if the worst team in the league plays the best team in the league, they might win. It's that close. So, like, yeah, he was on a losing streak, but anybody could beat anyone at any given time. And that's why I like when Goldberg and Brock did the quick 1 minute match, because like if you look at UFC fights and stuff, they don't always go 20 minutes. And WWE is trying to give their fans what they want, but sometimes a match might end quicker. And like I'm also wondering, Jinder's a perfect guy too, because he can wrestle. He doesn't do like 100 moves. He doesn't need a half an hour match to put himself over. He can do, the matches on Raw and SmackDown, like the 7 minute. Sometimes they only get 7 minutes. That's what I'm wondering. Like when I watched last night, Shinsuke and Dolph were the first match, and they had a good match. And Shinsuke gets over because of his entrance, but it's going to be really hard for him because he almost needs 15 to 20 minutes to have a good match to warm up, because he's not like super flashy. He just is like the king of strong style, and he'll keep picking away. But will he be able to have good, quick, when they're setting up for feuds and they just have like a quick match and then someone interferes and then it sets up for the match later? Like these kind of guys, like in NXT, they're so used to going to the takeovers and getting so much time that when they come up to the main roster, can they really get over with only having... That's why Perfect 10, Ty Dillinger, his gimmick is perfect, because he doesn't need to have a 20-minute match. He can come out, do his 10 thing, do his like 2 or 3 signature moves, and the crowd will eat it up, and then he can go. So, and I wish I didn't see that match yet versus Aiden English. I haven't watched the pre-show or whatever you want to call it. But it's a great time to be an indie wrestler. It's a great time to be a Canadian wrestler. And I'm just so proud of Jinder and the Singh brothers. Like, they truly deserve it. They're all good people. I haven't met Jinder Mahal, but I have met the Singh brothers, or Bollywood boys as I know them as. So just the message of this is, one, Canada is booming, and we should push for some kind of WWE Canada thing. And also, we need more shows. Like, does Saskatchewan have a lot of wrestling feds? I know Manitoba only has a couple. They're doing really well, the ones, and then like out east in Newfoundland and stuff, like there's a couple and they're doing really well, but we should be having some more. I'm not saying any Joe Smo that's like, I'm a wrestling fan, I'm going to start a promotion, should do it, but people that have good minds and have been involved in the business, don't be afraid to go out on the limb and invest, because I think you'll do well right now. All the promotions that I've seen that have opened up recently within the last year have all been doing pretty good for themselves. So yeah, don't give up. Go Canada, and congratulations, Jinder, because you just never know. I bet you 2 months ago, he never thought that he'd be champion right now, but he just kept working hard and being... That's the thing, too. He didn't, like, complain. If you're going backstage and complaining, then they're going to sour on you, too. It's okay to push for ideas and say, hey, I have this idea and stuff like that, and they may not always listen. Like, I've heard some of the shoot interviews where people keep coming up with ideas and no one listens to them. But one day, it's like winning the lottery. You gotta put your $2 down. I know you might not win for 10 years, but the one time you just might, and then it will be all worth it. This is episode 64 of The Willow Show. Remember, like, or you get a leg drop. Comment, or you get a clothesline. Subscribe, or you get a suplex. I'm your host, Elian Habanero. I love wrestling. Cuba!